Hello again, everybody. I'm Chris Reel, Baltimore City Guide and owner of Rent-A-Tour with another Baltimore story. And today I want to talk about an iconic American author. Even though he was born in Boston, Massachusetts, and he spent time in cities like New York and Philadelphia and Richmond, I've always believed that Baltimore has the most legitimate claim to this person's legacy because he's still here. On the corner of West Fayette and Green Street, at Old Westminster Burying Ground, you will find the grave of Edgar Allan Poe. In fact, all over the city of Baltimore, you will find interesting sites and landmarks related to the life of the great storyteller. From roughly 1832 to 1835, Poe lived in this house with his Aunt Maria and young cousin Virginia. The house, located on Amity Street west of downtown, was considered the countryside back then. The years that Poe lived here would later be described as among the happiest of his life. The Amity Street house has since been preserved as a museum. Only about a mile away, adjacent to the Baltimore Basilica, is a far more stately townhouse that once belonged to a distinguished Baltimore gentleman named John H.B. Latrobe. On an October evening in 1833, Latrobe welcomed fellow prominent Baltimoreans John Pendleton Kennedy and James H. Miller to his home. These three men were tasked with judging a writing contest on behalf of a periodical called the Baltimore Saturday Visitor. They awarded first place and a $50 cash prize to a then unknown Edgar Allan Poe for his short story, Manuscript Found in a Bottle. Poe's literary career had begun. In the ensuing years, he would live in Richmond, Virginia, New York, and Philadelphia, continuing to write on his own and editing literary journals. Poe would also marry his cousin Virginia. He was 26, she was 13. Despite her young age, Poe outlived his wife. She died of tuberculosis at the age of 24, and her early death is believed to have inspired some of Poe's writing. In 1849, Poe, now a widower, was living in the Bronx, New York, but in October of that year he would find himself back in Baltimore for reasons unknown. He would never leave. On October 3rd, he was found in dire straits, alive but unconscious, not far from Fells Point, muttering incoherently. He was taken to the Washington Medical College Hospital, where he did manage to survive for several days, but he never fully regained his senses, and so he was never able to tell anyone what had happened to him. The circumstances surrounding his death remain a mystery. There are some who believe that he simply drank himself to death. Others think that he may have been beaten and robbed. Still others think that he had somehow become infected with rabies. The doctor that attended Poe claims that his last words were, "Lord, help my poor soul." Poe died at the age of 40. Poe was originally buried in the family plot at Old Westminster Burying Ground, but years later, as his renown continued to grow, money was raised to erect a more prominent monument, and the body was moved to the front of the cemetery. He's laid to rest there alongside his wife, Virginia, and her mother, Maria. The city of Baltimore has really embraced its relationship with Edgar Allan Poe. Restaurants, bars, apartment buildings, even microbrew beer are named after the great author and some of his works. Our NFL football team, the Baltimore Ravens, takes its name from one of Poe's most famous poems. And on a plaza at the University of Baltimore is one of my favorite statues in the entire city. Sculptor Moses Ezekiel depicts Poe with his left hand raised ever so slightly to suggest the author is listening to ethereal music. The inscription is a quote from The Raven: "Dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before." Edgar Allan Poe was one of the fathers of American poetry, the master of the macabre, the inventor of the modern detective story. And although he lived in many different cities and his influence inspired literary arts the world over, Poe's own story is inextricably linked to Baltimore. And when you visit Baltimore, you can tour the home where Poe lived. You can enjoy a drink at the Horseshoe Came In On Saloon, believed to be Poe's last stop in Fells Point. You can even pay your respects at the great author's gravesite at Westminster Burying Ground. I'd be happy to show you myself. Just visit our website at www.rentatour.com. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at RealDeal125. If you enjoyed this video, please like, please share, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and let me know if you have an idea for an upcoming video. I'll do my best to get that on for you just as soon as I can. Hope you enjoyed this Baltimore story. I'll be back with another one real soon. But until then, thanks so much for watching. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you around.